Hospital CEO cornered a nurse on the rooftop, unaware she was an ex-SEAL. What followed shocked all. The night shift was always quieter than the day, but the quiet was deceptive. Emergency rooms never truly slept. Patients came and went. Machines beeped in rhythm with life and distress, and the staff moved with a practiced efficiency that could only come from years of experience. Becky had learned to navigate these corridors with a precision that made her almost invisible, yet always present where she was needed most. Becky was known for her calm demeanor. Patients often commented on how soothing her presence was, how she seemed to understand pain without words, and how she managed emergencies with a steady hand. Her colleagues respected her, even if they did not know the depth of her past. She had a way of staying composed when others panicked, but there was more to Becky than met the eye. Before becoming a nurse, Becky had lived a life few could imagine. She had served in the Navy SEALs for over a decade, completing missions in some of the most dangerous regions of the world. She had been trained to survive under extreme pressure, to make decisions in seconds that could mean life or death, and to face threats head-on with courage and precision. Her military career was classified, known only to a few in the military and now, secretly, to herself. She had left that world behind, not because she wanted to, but because she wanted a life where she could save lives in a different way, without the violence and chaos of war. At the hospital, her past was a secret she guarded carefully. To the administration, she was simply an exceptional nurse. To the patients, she was a beacon of hope. To her colleagues, she was dependable and trustworthy. But no one had the faintest idea of the skills she had honed during years of rigorous, life-threatening training. Becky liked it that way. She liked knowing that her strength and experience were hers alone, tools she could use if ever the need arose. That night, however, the calmness that usually filled the hospital felt different. Becky noticed it the moment she stepped out of the nurse's station. The elevators were unusually quiet, the fluorescent lights above her flickering softly, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Something in the air made her senses sharpen, a faint tension she could not ignore. She shook it off, telling herself it was probably just fatigue. Night shifts had a way of making the mind play tricks on itself. She had just finished checking on a patient in room 214, an elderly man recovering from a minor surgery, when her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. It was an unexpected call from Richard Halston, the hospital's CEO. Becky's hand hesitated for a moment before answering. Halston was a man whose reputation preceded him. He was known to be aggressive, sometimes harsh, and often intimidating. He had little patience for nurses who questioned his authority, and he had even less tolerance for anyone who dared to challenge his decisions. "Becky," he said, his voice calm but edged with an undertone that made her stomach tighten. "I need to see you on the rooftop, immediately." The request was unusual. Becky's eyebrows furrowed slightly. The rooftop was not a place where staff meetings or discussions usually happened. It was open, exposed, and mostly used for maintenance or emergency access. Her instincts, trained by years of military service, flickered at the word immediately. There was no room for delay. There was no hint of explanation in his tone, only an implicit demand. Becky excused herself politely to the staff on duty, making her way toward the service elevator that would take her to the rooftop. Each step she took was deliberate, her mind assessing the situation with the careful attention of a strategist. She thought of the possibilities. Was it an emergency involving the hospital, a complaint, or worse, something personal? Halston had never summoned her like this before. When the elevator doors opened, Becky stepped out into the rooftop corridor. The cold night air brushed against her face as she pushed open the heavy door. The city lights stretched endlessly before her, a sea of glowing windows and moving vehicles. It was a view she had often admired in silence, a reminder of the world outside the hospital's walls. Tonight, however, the beauty of the skyline did little to calm her growing sense of anticipation. Halston was already there, leaning slightly against the railing. His posture was casual, but Becky could sense the subtle tension in his body language. He turned as she approached, a thin smile crossing his face. "Becky," he said again, "thank you for coming. I need to have a serious conversation with you." Becky nodded, keeping her tone neutral. "Of course, sir. What is this regarding?" Halston's smile tightened. It's about the report you filed yesterday. I need to understand why you would question some of the administrative decisions. You know how seriously we take these matters." Becky's mind flickered. She remembered the report. It had been about staffing shortages in the emergency room and concerns about patient safety. She had submitted it through the proper channels, with all the facts clearly documented. It was her duty as a nurse to ensure patient care was never compromised. "I simply reported what I observed, sir," she said calmly. "I believe it's important for patient safety." Halston's expression hardened. "Reporting is one thing, challenging authority is another. I need to know where your loyalties lie, Becky. Are you a team player or someone who disrupts the chain of command?" The words were sharp, and the situation was becoming increasingly tense. Becky's pulse remained steady, but her mind went through rapid calculations. She was alone with the CEO on an open rooftop, and the conversation was shifting from professional to personal. Her instincts from years in the SEALs told her to be cautious, to assess every possible angle. "Sir," she said, maintaining eye contact, "my loyalty is to the patients. I believe that is where every nurse's loyalty should be. I do my job with honesty and integrity. That has never failed me." Halston's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, invading the small space between them. "You seem very confident," he said, almost mockingly. "But confidence can be dangerous, can't it?" Becky did not flinch. She remained composed, her military training guiding her body and mind. Every movement, every breath was controlled. She had been in situations far more dangerous than a confrontation with an arrogant CEO. She had faced threats in foreign lands, missions where failure meant life or death, and yet she had survived, always calm, always prepared. For a moment, Halston's aggression seemed to falter, though he masked it with his usual bravado. Becky noticed the slight hesitation, a crack in his otherwise commanding presence. She did not exploit it, not yet. The rooftop was open, and any rash move could escalate unnecessarily. She kept her stance firm but non-threatening, projecting calm authority rather than aggression. As the city hummed quietly below, the tension between them grew. It was a quiet kind of danger, one that required patience and control rather than force. Becky's eyes scanned the rooftop subtly, noting exit points, nearby doors, and environmental features, instincts honed from years in combat. Every detail was important, even if it went unnoticed by Halston. Finally, Halston stepped back slightly, crossing his arms. "I suppose I will be reporting this conversation to the board," he said, his voice low but deliberate. "They will want to know how you handled your responsibilities and whether you are fit for your position." Becky remained silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "I always act in the best interest of the patients, sir. That will never change. I hope the board will see that." The CEO regarded her for a long moment, the tension between them unspoken but palpable. Then, with a dismissive nod, he turned toward the door. "We will see, Becky, we will see." Becky watched him leave, her mind still alert. The immediate threat had passed, but she knew that this was only the beginning. Her past had prepared her for moments like this, though, and she was ready. As she looked out over the city, she felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. The night was far from over, and she was ready for whatever came next. With a quiet breath, she turned back toward the hospital corridors. Life on the night shift would continue, patients would need her care, and she would continue to move with the same quiet efficiency that had earned her respect among colleagues. But deep down, she knew that her skills, honed in a far different battlefield, might soon be called upon in ways she never expected. The night air was cool against her skin as she re-entered the building. The hospital lights flickered softly, and the distant beeping of machines reminded her of her purpose. She was a nurse, a protector, a guardian. And though the world might never know the full extent of her capabilities, she carried them silently, ready for the moment they would be needed most. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with its usual rhythm, though the tension from the rooftop encounter lingered in Becky's mind. She moved through the corridors with her usual calmness, greeting patients and colleagues alike, but every sound, every movement seemed sharper than before. Something had changed overnight. Richard Halston, the CEO, had made it clear that he would not let the report slide, and Becky knew that her professional integrity could once again put her in a difficult position. Despite the lingering unease, Becky focused on her patients. There was a young boy recovering from surgery, a mother anxious about her newborn, and an elderly man struggling with breathing problems. To everyone around her, she was simply the reliable nurse they had always admired. She administered medications with precision, checked vital signs with careful attention, and offered words of encouragement that seemed to calm both patients and their families. But beneath the calm exterior, her mind remained alert, reviewing every possible scenario from the previous night. Halston had been unusually quiet during morning rounds, but Becky noticed the way his gaze lingered on her as he passed by. It was not just observation, it was an assessment. He wanted to see how she reacted under pressure, and he was likely looking for any sign of weakness. Becky met his gaze briefly, her expression neutral, conveying nothing. She had learned long ago that calmness could be as powerful as any action. It could unsettle an opponent more than anger or fear ever could. By mid-afternoon, Becky received a discreet message from one of her colleagues. Halston is calling another rooftop meeting. He wants you alone. He said it's urgent. Her stomach tightened slightly. She had anticipated that last night would not be the only time she had to face him, but the knowledge did not shake her resolve. She had been trained to remain composed in situations far more dangerous than a confrontation with a CEO. She made her way to the elevator, keeping her pace steady, her mind running through the details of her surroundings, exit points, and potential risks. Every instinct she had developed as a Navy SEAL was now quietly guiding her movements. The rooftop door opened, and the cold wind greeted her. The city below stretched out in all directions, cars moving like streams of light through the night, buildings rising like silent guardians. Halston was already there, pacing slowly near the railing. His posture was rigid, and there was a sharpness in his voice when he finally spoke. "Becky," he said without turning, "I need to understand your perspective. You've raised concerns that question the competence of this hospital's administration. I need to know why you would risk your position over what could be seen as a minor issue." Becky stepped closer, keeping her voice calm. "Sir, the issue is not minor. It's about patient safety. Staff shortages, miscommunication, and delays in care can put lives at risk. My responsibility as a nurse is to ensure patients receive proper care. That is not negotiable." Halston stopped pacing and turned to face her. His eyes were cold, but there was a flicker of unease in them. He had expected resistance, yes, but not the unwavering calm that radiated from Becky. Many people would have argued, shouted, or backed down, but Becky stood firm, her presence quiet yet commanding. "You seem very confident," Halston said, stepping closer. "Confidence can be admirable, but it can also be dangerous. Not everyone can handle responsibility without letting emotion interfere." Becky did not flinch. "Emotion has no place in patient care. Decisions must be made with knowledge, experience, and calm judgment. I act based on facts and training, not fear or intimidation." Halston frowned, clearly frustrated that she was not reacting as he expected. He tried a different approach, attempting to unsettle her with a personal challenge. "Do you think you can handle the pressure here, Becky? This hospital is not a battlefield. It's a place of order and hierarchy. Are you prepared to follow rules, or will you continue to act independently?" Becky's mind assessed the situation carefully. He wanted her to feel intimidated, to question herself, but she did not allow it. She had been trained to stay calm in hostile situations, to evaluate threats rationally, and to maintain control. She met his gaze evenly. "I am prepared to follow the rules," she said, "but I am also prepared to act in the best interest of the patients. If following rules compromises their care, then my duty is to speak up. That is the balance every nurse must maintain." Halston's frustration grew. He had underestimated her completely. He had assumed that she would cower under his authority, that a private confrontation would break her composure. But Becky's calmness was a challenge in itself, and it unsettled him more than he cared to admit. As he stepped closer, Becky instinctively assessed her environment. The rooftop was open, but she knew every inch of it. She noted the railings, the maintenance doors, and the emergency ladders. Her body shifted slightly, not in aggression, but in readiness. Years of SEAL training had taught her to always be aware of surroundings, to anticipate actions, and to control the situation without escalating it unnecessarily. Halston leaned closer, speaking in a low tone. "You know, Becky, sometimes people need to learn their place. I hope you understand that challenging authority can have consequences." Becky's response was calm but firm. "I understand the importance of authority, sir, But I also understand the importance of responsibility. Authority without accountability is meaningless. My responsibility is to the patients, not to fear of reprisal. Halston's eyes narrowed. He realized that words alone were not enough to intimidate her. He had expected to provoke fear, but instead he faced unwavering resolve. The quiet strength she projected was disarming, a reminder that power could take many forms. The wind picked up, rustling her hair gently, and the city below seemed to hold its breath. Becky did not move hastily, but her stance was ready, her mind alert to any sudden action. Halston's aggression had not escalated yet, but she knew that appearances could be deceiving. People who seemed calm could act suddenly, and people who seemed threatening could falter. She relied on her instincts, honed over years of demanding training, to read the situation accurately. Suddenly, Halston made a small step toward her, a deliberate move meant to intimidate. His presence loomed larger than it had before, but Becky did not flinch. Her training took over silently. Every fiber of her being was ready to respond, but only in a measured, controlled way. She would not act rashly, but she would not be intimidated either. "Becky," Halston said, his tone sharper now, "do you think you are the only one capable of making decisions? There are systems in place for a reason. Your insistence on independence could disrupt the entire hospital." Becky held her ground, her voice calm and steady. "Systems exist to ensure order, sir. But when systems fail to protect those in need, silence becomes complicity. I refuse to be complicit when patients' lives are at stake. That is not independence. That is responsibility." Halston's frustration was visible now. His attempts to provoke fear or doubt in her had failed. Instead, her words, calm demeanor, and unwavering posture forced him to confront the limits of his authority. He had expected to dominate the situation with intimidation, but Becky's composed strength challenged his assumptions. For a moment, there was silence between them. The city lights twinkled below, the night air cool against their skin, and the hum of distant traffic created a strange calm around the rooftop. It was as if the world itself had paused to witness the quiet standoff. Becky did not lower her gaze. She did not move hastily. She knew that patience and control were often more powerful than immediate action. Years of training had taught her that confrontation was not about showing strength. It was about controlling the situation, assessing threats, and acting decisively when necessary. Halston exhaled sharply, clearly frustrated that his usual tactics had failed. He had underestimated her entirely, assuming that a nurse could be intimidated like any other employee. But Becky was far from ordinary. Her calm, measured presence was a reminder that true strength was not loud or aggressive. It was quiet, confident, and controlled. As the wind continued to blow gently, Becky prepared herself for the possibility that this confrontation might escalate. She did not seek conflict, but she would not be forced into submission. Her mind reviewed every option, every potential outcome, and every action she could take to maintain control while ensuring that no one, including herself, was harmed. The rooftop seemed vast, open, and vulnerable, but Becky moved as if she owned the space. Her confidence was not arrogance. It was the quiet certainty of someone who had faced far greater dangers and had learned to remain calm, focused, and in control. Halston, on the other hand, felt the first hint of doubt creeping into his mind. He realized that intimidation alone would not work. He was dealing with someone far more capable than he had anticipated. Finally, Becky spoke, her voice steady, almost gentle. "Sir, I am willing to discuss any concerns you have, but I will not compromise the care of patients. That is my duty, and that is where my focus will always be." Halston paused, the weight of her words settling in. He had expected resistance, yes, but not the quiet, unyielding strength that Becky exuded. For the first time, he realized that this nurse, who seemed ordinary to everyone else, possessed a discipline, focus, and capability that few could imagine. The rooftop remained quiet, the city sprawling endlessly below as the two stood facing each other. It was not a battle of fists or weapons, but a confrontation of will, patience, and understanding. Becky's calmness was not weakness. It was a statement of readiness, a demonstration of inner strength, and a quiet warning that she was not someone to be underestimated. In that moment, Halston understood something important. True courage and capability were not always visible. Sometimes they were quiet, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the moment they were needed. Becky Turner was one of those rare individuals, and he had underestimated her completely. The wind continued to blow, carrying with it the sounds of the city, and Becky prepared herself for whatever would come next. She had faced challenges far greater than this, and she knew that patience, observation, and controlled action were her greatest allies. The rooftop confrontation was only the beginning, and she was ready for whatever followed. The tension on the rooftop had been building steadily over the past hours, like a storm quietly gathering its strength. Becky Turner stood with calm determination, her eyes focused, her body relaxed but alert. She knew that Richard Halston, the hospital's CEO, was testing her in ways she could not ignore. He had underestimated her from the very beginning, assuming that a nurse would be easily intimidated. But Becky was no ordinary nurse, and she intended to prove that quietly without escalating unnecessarily. Halston paced back and forth, muttering under his breath, clearly frustrated that his authority was not having the expected effect. He had tried verbal intimidation, subtle threats, and appeals to the chain of command, but Becky remained unshaken. Her calm presence was unnerving, and for the first time he felt that he might have misjudged the situation entirely. "You think you can just defy authority?" Halston finally asked, his voice rising slightly, betraying his irritation. "Do you understand the consequences of continuing to challenge me?" Becky's expression remained steady. "I understand responsibility, sir. My responsibility is to the patients and their safety. That is my duty, and it cannot be compromised." Halston stepped closer, and Becky instinctively adjusted her stance, not in fear but in readiness. Years of SEAL training had taught her to read body language, to anticipate actions, and to stay in control. She did not want conflict, but she would not be cornered either. Every muscle in her body was relaxed yet prepared to respond instantly if necessary. Halston leaned forward, trying to impose his presence. "You don't understand the consequences, Becky. This is about power. This is about control. You can't just act independently and expect to be left unchallenged." Becky remained calm. "Authority without accountability is meaningless, sir. Patients depend on us, not on fear or intimidation. If following the rules harms them, then it is not the rules I follow, but my duty." The wind blew sharply, tugging at her hair and clothing, but Becky stood her ground. Her eyes scanned the rooftop subtly, noting railings, emergency exits, and every detail of her surroundings. Every instinct told her to stay aware and measured, ensuring she could control the situation without causing harm. She had been trained to handle far greater dangers in much less predictable environments. Halston's frustration grew. His intimidation tactics had failed. He stepped closer, invading her personal space in a silent attempt to assert dominance. "You think you can control this situation?" he demanded. "You are only a nurse. You have no real power here." Becky's calm voice carried a quiet authority. "Power is not measured by position alone. It is measured by knowledge, responsibility, and action. I am here to ensure the safety and care of the patients. That is my power, and it is one you cannot take from me." Halston's face tightened. He had expected resistance to break, not resolve to strengthen. He had assumed that a confrontation on a rooftop would intimidate a nurse, but Becky's presence was steady, measured, and commanding in a way he had not anticipated. The moment seemed suspended in time. The city lights below twinkled, indifferent to the confrontation unfolding above them. The hum of distant traffic and the occasional call of a night bird created an oddly serene atmosphere. Yet beneath that calm, the tension between the two humans on the rooftop was almost tangible. Every movement, every glance carried meaning. Halston made a sudden step forward, a physical attempt to intimidate, assuming Becky would flinch. But she remained composed. Her training kicked in silently. She shifted her weight slightly, ready to respond, but did not make an aggressive move. Every detail of her posture, every controlled breath, communicated that she was fully prepared without being threatening. "You are too confident for your own good," Halston said sharply. "Confidence can blind people to reality. Are you sure you understand what you're dealing with?" Becky's gaze remained unwavering. "Confidence grounded in knowledge and preparation is never blind, sir. I have faced challenges far greater than this and learned to remain calm, focused, and responsible. I am not blind to reality. I am ready for it." For the first time, Halston hesitated. He had expected a simple confrontation, one that would reinforce his authority and remind a nurse of her place. Instead, he faced a quiet but undeniable strength. It was not arrogance, nor was it aggression. It was control, focus, and experience. Becky's calmness forced him to confront a truth he had not anticipated. He was dealing with someone far more capable than he had imagined. The wind intensified, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city. Becky's mind remained alert, analyzing every movement, every word, every subtle shift in Halston's stance. She had been trained to recognize threats, to anticipate actions, and to respond decisively while maintaining control. Though she had left the battlefield years ago, those skills remained ingrained in her. Halston's voice cut through the tension. "You think you can just stand there and lecture me? Do you have any idea how dangerous your attitude is?" Becky's response was calm but firm. "My attitude is grounded in duty and responsibility. That is not dangerous. Ignoring the safety of patients, failing to act when necessary, that is dangerous. I act with purpose, sir, not recklessness." The CEO's frustration boiled over. He stepped even closer, his posture aggressive, his words sharp. "You are challenging my authority, Becky. You are making this personal. I will not allow this to continue." Becky's eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear but in focus. She could see the tension in his movements, the subtle signs of hesitation that revealed his misjudgment. She did not need to threaten or act aggressively. Her calmness, combined with her awareness and readiness, was already a silent message. She was not to be underestimated. Then Halston made a sudden, reckless move, stepping too close, assuming that his presence alone would intimidate her. Becky reacted instantly, with controlled precision. She shifted her weight, positioning herself strategically, and used a subtle maneuver to create distance between them without harm. It was a defensive move, practiced, efficient, and entirely nonviolent. Halston froze, surprised by the sudden but controlled response. He had assumed she would flinch, step back, or react emotionally. Instead, she had maintained control, neutralized the immediate threat, and remained calm. For the first time, he realized that this nurse, who appeared ordinary to everyone else, was someone with skills, training, and awareness far beyond his imagination. The sudden movement drew attention. A security guard, who had been patrolling nearby, noticed the commotion and approached cautiously. The sight that greeted him was unusual. The CEO frozen, Becky calm and composed, and the atmosphere charged with tension yet strangely controlled. Becky did not speak to the guard immediately. She maintained her stance, ensuring that Halston remained restrained without causing harm. Her training guided her actions silently, every movement precise, measured, and purposeful. The guard, realizing that Becky had the situation under control, called for backup quietly, careful not to escalate the scenario. Halston, now aware that witnesses had arrived, stepped back slightly, his arrogance giving way to caution. He had underestimated Becky completely. The realization settled in. He was dealing with someone whose capability was far beyond what he had expected. His attempts at intimidation had failed spectacularly. Becky released her defensive stance slowly, maintaining calm authority. She spoke softly but firmly, addressing Halston directly. "Sir, this confrontation is unnecessary. I am willing to discuss concerns, but intimidation and threats are not the way forward. Let us resolve this professionally with respect and understanding." Halston's face flushed with frustration and embarrassment. He had been cornered, not through violence, but through composure, awareness, and skill. Becky's presence had neutralized the threat without harm, exposing the limits of his own authority and judgment. The security team arrived moments later, discreetly ensuring that the situation remained controlled. Halston, realizing the presence of witnesses, stepped back fully, his demeanor subdued. Becky remained calm, her posture relaxed yet ready, demonstrating control without aggression. The confrontation ended without physical harm, but its impact was profound. Those who witnessed it understood that Becky Turner was not just a nurse. She was someone trained to handle extreme situations with precision, calmness, and responsibility. Her actions were not about showing strength, but about maintaining control, ensuring safety, and demonstrating professionalism. As the rooftop cleared and normalcy returned, Becky allowed herself a small breath of relief. She had faced a test of character and skill, one that could have escalated but did not. She had proven, silently and effectively, that courage, preparation, and calm determination could resolve conflict far more powerfully than aggression ever could. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent yet beautiful. Becky knew that the confrontation had changed something, not just in Halston's perception of her, but in the hospital itself. Her quiet strength, experience, and composure had left an impression that would not be forgotten. For Becky, the rooftop incident was a reminder of her dual life: a nurse committed to saving lives, and a former SEAL whose skills, though hidden, remained ever present. She walked back into the hospital, the hum of machines and quiet chatter of staff surrounding her, ready to continue her work, knowing that true courage often manifests quietly in the right moment when it is most needed. After the rooftop confrontation, Becky returned to her duties as if nothing unusual had happened. The hospital hummed with the familiar rhythm of machines, footsteps, and soft conversations. Nurses moved quickly from room to room, doctors consulted charts, and patients received care under the watchful eyes of the staff. To anyone observing, Becky was the same calm, efficient nurse she had always been. But beneath her composed exterior, she was reflecting on the events of the past night. The rooftop encounter had been intense, a test of patience, awareness, and self-control. Becky knew that her actions had sent a clear message. She could not be intimidated, and she would not compromise her responsibilities. She had faced the situation with the precision and calm of her SEAL training, yet without unnecessary aggression. It was a reminder that true strength often manifests quietly, through presence, preparedness, and confidence rather than loud displays. Throughout the morning rounds, she noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. Staff members who had heard about the rooftop incident exchanged glances, their expressions mixed with curiosity and newfound respect. Some nurses whispered quietly, sharing their admiration for the calm way Becky had handled the CEO. Patients and visitors, unaware of the details, saw only her consistent professionalism. The contrast between perception and reality was striking. Becky's strength was quietly acknowledged, even if most could not fully understand it. Meanwhile, Halston retreated to his office, visibly shaken. The confrontation had challenged him in a way he had not expected. He had assumed that his position and authority would be enough to intimidate any staff member. But Becky had demonstrated that confidence grounded in knowledge, preparation, and responsibility could outweigh formal power. The realization was uncomfortable, and he spent the morning reviewing the reports and considering the repercussions of his actions. He could no longer see Becky simply as a nurse to be controlled. She was a professional whose capabilities could not be underestimated. As the day progressed, the hospital began to settle back into its usual routine. Becky moved from patient to patient, tending to their needs with her usual grace and efficiency. A young mother recovering from surgery smiled at her, expressing gratitude for her care. An elderly man, struggling with mobility, asked for assistance, and Becky guided him patiently, offering encouragement with every step. It was in these moments, the small acts of service, the careful attention to detail, the empathy and patience, that Becky felt the true weight of her purpose. Later in the day, a meeting was called in the administration office. Becky was invited to join, alongside Halston and a few members of the hospital board. The atmosphere was formal, yet there was a palpable shift from the usual tension. Halston addressed the board first, recounting the events on the rooftop. He was careful with his words, presenting the incident as a situation that required review and understanding. He emphasized Becky's professionalism, her calm demeanor, and her ability to handle an unexpected challenge without escalation. When Becky spoke, her tone was measured and respectful. She reiterated her commitment to patient safety, her dedication to following hospital protocols, and her belief in the importance of communication and responsibility. She did not speak of intimidation, fear, or confrontation. Instead, she focused on professionalism, integrity, and the responsibilities inherent in her role. Her words were simple, clear, and compelling, reflecting both her experience in high-pressure situations and her dedication to her current profession. The board members listened attentively, occasionally exchanging nods of approval. Becky's calm authority contrasted sharply with the tension of the situation, reinforcing her reputation as a reliable, competent professional. Even Halston, who had expected the confrontation to highlight his authority, could not ignore the undeniable impression Becky left. He realized that her skills, discipline, and composure were assets to the hospital rather than challenges to his control. After the meeting, Becky returned to her ward. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had maintained her integrity without compromising her principles. The day continued, filled with the usual responsibilities, administering medications, checking vital signs, assisting in procedures, and offering comfort to patients and families. Yet there was a subtle shift in the way her colleagues interacted with her. They looked at her with renewed respect, recognizing not just her skill as a nurse, but her inner strength and composure under pressure. Word of the rooftop incident spread throughout the hospital. Staff members spoke in hushed tones, sharing their admiration for Becky's calm handling of the situation. The story was not sensationalized with violence or drama. It focused on her composure, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to responsibility. Nurses discussed her ability to remain calm in high-pressure situations. Doctors acknowledged her sharp judgment, and administrative staff considered her perspective more seriously. Becky's reputation grew quietly but significantly. Meanwhile, Halston faced the consequences of his actions. The board reviewed the situation carefully, considering his behavior and the way he had handled the confrontation. He was reminded that leadership required not only authority, but also understanding, patience, and respect for staff. Becky's professionalism had highlighted shortcomings in his approach, and he was required to reflect on the incident and implement measures to prevent similar situations in the future. Back on the wards, Becky continued her work without seeking recognition. She assisted a patient struggling with recovery, guided a young nurse through a challenging procedure, and provided comfort to a family worried about a loved one. In each moment, she demonstrated the qualities that had made her successful both in the military and as a nurse: patience, awareness, skill, and calm under pressure. Her quiet strength inspired others without demanding attention or accolades. By the evening, the hospital had returned to its usual rhythm. Becky walked through the corridors, observing the staff, patients, and ongoing activities. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction in her work, knowing that her actions had reinforced the importance of integrity, responsibility, and professionalism. The rooftop confrontation was behind her, and the lessons it carried would remain with the hospital community for a long time. Reflecting on the incident, Becky considered the parallels between her past and present. Her time as a Navy SEAL had taught her the value of preparation, observation, and calm decision-making. Those lessons had translated seamlessly into her nursing career. She understood that true strength was not measured by dominance or aggression, but by the ability to remain composed, assess situations accurately, and act responsibly. The rooftop incident had been a test, and she had passed not through force but through presence, awareness, and quiet confidence. Later that night, as she completed her final rounds, Becky paused by a patient's window, looking out at the city lights below. She reflected on the events of the past day, the rooftop confrontation, the board meeting, and the subtle changes in the hospital's atmosphere. Each experience reinforced her belief in the importance of professionalism, integrity, and courage. She understood that her presence made a difference, not because of intimidation or displays of strength, but because of calm, responsible action guided by knowledge and experience. In the days that followed, Becky noticed a shift in the hospital culture. Staff members approached their responsibilities with renewed dedication, inspired by the example she had set. Doctors sought her advice on patient care, nurses followed her guidance, and administrative staff considered her perspective more carefully. The hospital had become a place where responsibility, respect, and professionalism were emphasized, and Becky's influence, though quiet, was significant. Halston, for his part, adjusted his approach. He recognized that leadership required more than authority. It required understanding, patience, and respect for the skills and judgment of those under his direction. Becky's example had prompted him to reflect on his own behavior, fostering a more collaborative and respectful environment. The incident had transformed his perception, reminding him that true capability often lies beneath the surface, revealed not through confrontation, but through consistent professionalism and composure. Becky continued her work, caring for patients, mentoring staff, and maintaining the calm efficiency that had earned her respect. Her dual life, as a former Navy SEAL and a dedicated nurse, remained her secret, known only to herself. Yet the skills, discipline, and calm she had cultivated over years of service were evident in every action she took. She had faced a challenge, handled it with integrity and skill, and left a lasting impression on everyone around her. As the night ended and the hospital settled into quiet routine, Becky felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had demonstrated that courage, skill, and professionalism could manifest quietly, without violence or aggression. Her actions had reinforced the values of responsibility, integrity, and calm under pressure, leaving a lasting impact on the hospital, her colleagues, and the culture of care she valued so deeply. Becky Turner returned to her duties, confident that she had faced the challenge with composure and intelligence. The rooftop incident, once a source of tension, had become a defining moment, not because of confrontation or conflict, but because of the quiet strength she displayed. Her dedication to patient care, her calm presence, and her unwavering professionalism had left an impression that would endure far longer than the brief moments of tension on that rooftop. In the end, the hospital thrived, staff worked together more cohesively, and patients continued to receive excellent care. Becky's quiet courage and steadfast dedication had transformed the situation, demonstrating that true strength is not loud or aggressive but consistent, professional, and guided by knowledge and integrity. And though she remained humble and unassuming, everyone who had witnessed her calm presence on that rooftop knew one undeniable truth. Becky Turner was a force to be respected, a guardian of care, and a symbol of quiet, unwavering strength.